Moving on from that to something more on topic, I'm going to take you through some starters, plenaries and some active learning activities that can be used for formative assessment purposes within software design and development. For me, formative assessment takes place in every lesson. It starts as soon as the students enter the classroom through my starter activity. These simple and quick tasks, mainly individual-based tasks, help activate prior learning, and it gives me instant feedback so that I can adapt my lesson to suit the needs of all. Because starters are low stake, students can participate without the fear of failure. You'll have noticed a few different starter techniques on the screen just now. These starters encourage confidence and they help me assess student understanding in a relaxed setting. Importantly, they all promote some form of retrieval practice. By recalling information from memory, that helps our students reinforce long-term retention. There are many different ways to ask starter or plenary questions like we've heard already tonight, and it is really your knowledge of your students and their individual learning journey that will allow you to pick the most appropriate ones. Now let's talk about plenaries. Plenaries are essential for consolidating learning. They help students summarise what they've learned and they reinforce those key points. Plenaries often encourage reflection. It allows students to think about what they've learned, how confident they feel, and what do they need to revisit. So that's the kind of metacognition that's key to developing our individual learners. And again, on screen, I've listed a few different types of plenary techniques. For me, a strong plenary ensures that the learning in my lessons continue from the very first moment through the starter to the very last minute just before they leave the classroom. They give us a valuable snapshot of what our students have taken away in each individual lesson. And this will help us identify whether we need to reteach anything or whether we can move forward with new content. If you take a wee second, you can have a wee read at some of the plenaries on screen. And what you'll see is plenaries and starters are pretty interchangeable. So you can use it for a plenary, you can use it for a starter and mix things up. Moving on to a wee starter activity. There's so much content to cover for software development that it makes the possibilities and the different styles of starter and plenary questions, like I've shown, are pretty endless. I always start the topic and individual aspects off with a really simple starter to build that confidence. So these are just really quick questions that we can put together to form parts of past papers. It's something really easy and quick to implement in our classroom using a mini whiteboard. So when students reveal their answer, it's very easy for me to identify who or how many have got the answer correct and therefore need further support. So here's an example of this type of question. And I'm going to use a poll just now to get your answers. But in the classroom, like I say, this would be a mini whiteboard or a show me board activity. I'll give you a few minutes to have a wee look at the flowchart, have a read over it, and then you can vote on the poll. What I would ask is please don't click poll at the end because that will end the poll for everybody. If you could just submit your vote for me. So now you've had a wee chance to read it, okay? If the two cards that were drawn were a 9 and an ace, what would be the correct answer? So you've got a 9 and you've got an ace. So what you could say at this point to the young people is that maybe with a 9 and an ace, they might not have an answer. And again, that's getting them to read and understand your flowchart to come up with there isn't a value for your answer. Okay. If there's a 9 and a 6, what would be your answer? Again, same scenario, give them a wee chance to look at it. We don't actually have an answer. So this question is, if there was a 9 and a 4, What's your answer? And I'll let you vote on that one. So we've got a 9 and we've got a 4. And I'm going to end the poll. We all agree that it would be 5. So that's something nice, quick, confident, that'll help build their examples. And once you've done that, you can move on to some more challenging questions. And these kind of challenging questions will allow you to dive deeper into each individual student's learning and provide them with a little bit more feedback and direction for improvement. So on the screen, what you will see is a harder type starter question. There's just a little bit more to that question. There's 3 parts to it. It'll just tease their thinking more than just the previous question. You're ready to move on to your classroom learning. And one of the ways that I really like to do that is using Parsons puzzles. For me, when students engage in tasks like problem solving and group work discussion, we get valuable real-time feedback. We can observe their reasoning, their justifications. We can listen to the questions that these type of challenges bring for the young people, and we can assess how confident they are in dealing with these different challenges before we move into traditional summative assessment. And feedback that we can give from active learning it's immediate, it's low pressure, it's easy for the young people to take on board, and it's really, really actionable for them. Like I say, one of my favourite activities for this in terms of software development is Parsons puzzles. It's really, really good to help in understanding with programming. So what is a Parsons puzzle? Well, essentially, it's an activity where students are given some completed lines of code, but the lines of code have been jumbled up. So the challenge for them isn't to write the code, because that can be at times quite daunting. It's to take the code that they've been given and rearrange it to form the correct sequence so they've got a correct working program. And the purpose of this is to help our young people develop a stronger understanding of program logic and structure. It shifts the focus away from syntax, when for young people and for new coders, this can be a little bit overwhelming. So instead of kind of worrying about syntax and getting things right, it encourages them to critically think about how the program's built and how it's put together. So here's how it works. I would always start by giving an overview of the problem statement, highlighting what the completed problem should do so that students have that clear understanding of the task. And as a new activity, I ensure that I'm reminding my students about coding constructs and how they're written. The next thing I'll do is I'll give them a program just like the one you see at the left or the right of you on the screen. I'll then tell them a couple of things that they should notice about the code. It's not got indentation and it's not in the correct order. So if we take the example on the screen, you can see what the program is expected to do, display how many times a fruit of the user's choice appears in that preset list. So depending on how much scaffolding you need to give your students as a whole class, as a group, as an individual, you can remind them that everything inside a loop should have indentation. We need to show the start and the end of the loop. If you're using a total or a count, we should initialize that at the beginning of the program so that it starts afresh every time. You could even say something as simple as a reminder, can you print the output on the screen before you take anything in from the user? And like I said previously, you'll know your students best as to how best to scaffold and support this. And the idea is that as students become more advanced in their code comprehension, you can reduce that amount of scaffolding. We can even introduce some lines of code that are not actually needed in the program, or as well as just getting them to reorganize into the correct sequence, you could get them to put in some indentation as well. So this can be done as a paper exercise. You can do it using your mini whiteboards. You can use free software that you can get online, such as Hot Potatoes, that will create your own interactive Parsons puzzles. You can even use Morag's fuzzy felt boards from earlier on as a means of allowing the students to reorganise their work. It can be done individually to provide individual feedback, or as a peer learning and peer assessment activity, or any way you feel that it would benefit the young people. So Parsons style exercises with automatic gradings are also available online, and for us that makes them even more accessible and practical. And I've put some details in our swag bag. So now I've talked to you about a Parsons activity. You know what it is, you know how to do it. We're going to have a wee shot on our own. So what you're going to see on the screen is that there is a programme that needs to be sequenced correctly. So if you all get a post-it note, you can use the line numbers down the left-hand side and reorganise this programme. So we need a programme that asks the user for a number and then displays how many times there is a number in our list, 5, 12, 7, 3, 18, 19, that are greater than that user's choice of a number. So I'll give you a wee couple of minutes to have a read at the code and try to reorganise it into the correct sequence. We've got some really good solutions on the screen just now. What you will notice if you have a wee look around at different people's post-its is that there's different ways of putting this programme together in certain areas. So some people have done 1, 4, 8, but those are all declare lines, so they could really be in any order. I'll give you another 30 seconds just to finish off your answers, and then we'll have a wee look at the correct solution. Okay, so let's see what that correct solution was. So how close were we? Parsons puzzles have lots of benefits. They help build that confidence in an individual, in a group, in a class setting that's relaxed, low stake, low pressure. It encourages all our young people to think logically. It reduces the frustration of having to think about the syntax and getting things really syntactically, grammatically correct. We're giving them the code, we're just getting them to think, how does this all come together? What goes inside the loop, what goes inside the if conditions, and they're really perfect for differentiation. They help us enable and understand where our students are, even if they're not ready to write that code. So rather than jumping straight in and getting them to write code, bring it back to basics, let's explain the code, let's talk about it, and let's see if they can really understand how to put things together. There are many other learning activity methods that we can use to support students' learning and understanding of software development, especially in terms of code comprehension, and you should be seeing some on screen just now. There's examples of all of these, how to do it, how it works, and some tasks in our swag bag. Just remember that all active learning can be used as formative assessment. It's turning hands-on collaborative activities into opportunities for us to provide feedback to young people, for feedback to be on peer-to-peer basis, or to give them the opportunity for individual feedback to help progress their understanding during the learning process. And that's really, really important. Formative assessment is not about the end goal, it's about how can we develop that learning throughout the way. So active learning becomes formative assessment when we observe our young people doing that, and we observe them responding to their learning journey. When young people can generate evidence of their thinking and can improve on their thinking process independently. When we give young people the opportunity to reflect and to feedback. And of course, most importantly, it informs next steps in learning for young people. Where do they need to revise? What do they need to re-go over? And what do we need to reteach because our young people have not quite got it? So I hope that this kind of wee short session has given you some food for thought. as to how we can embed formative assessment into our lessons for software development and code comprehension. Pretty much the same that other tutors have said tonight about the techniques being interchangeable. The nature of these tasks can not only be used for software development at National 5 and higher, but across the BGE as well as across other units of N5 and higher. It's really about being creative as possible to keep the lessons active, to ensure our learners are leading and actively participating in their own lessons. So I think that's enough for me, folks. So I'm going to pass you back to Kim for our little closing session.